So many people ask me where to start when they decide to get their financial lives in order. Do I start by making a budget, tracking my expenses, paying off debt, or consolidating loans? Depending on who you talk to, any of these may be the correct response, but my advice is to always start with where you are by reflecting and analyzing your personal finances. And I know it's sometimes really scary, but this will allow you to start and understand your beginning to success. I suggest you start by taking an inventory of your personal finances. There are many ways to do this, but I recommend tackling your personal finances both quantitatively and qualitatively. It's easier to start with numbers, in my opinion. So bank accounts, loans, credit card balances, car notes, mortgages, etc. Write down all of your liquid assets and your debts in one place, like the spreadsheet. Let's start off with our debts. There's an easy and free way to see all your debts in one place, and that's with a credit report. But be sure you're going to annualcreditreport.com to get one of your free annual credit reports from one of the 3 credit bureaus. Your credit report will show you all your debts from the past 7 years. It'll also give you information about your lenders, such as their contact information, which I also recommend adding to the spreadsheet to make it easier for you to reach out to them in the future in case you have questions or want to negotiate terms. If you still have student loans, credit cards, personal loans, car notes, mortgages, etc., they'll most likely be on your credit report. But if you notice that something's missing, you may want to pull another credit report from one of the other credit bureaus, since lenders are not required to report to all 3 credit bureaus. So basically what I'm saying is your 3 credit reports may look the same, but it could be that they aren't identical. Normally, I would recommend getting your credit reports on a staggered timeline, like pulling one from Equifax in January, another one from Experian in May, and then pull TransUnion in September. This makes it easier for you to keep track of your debts regularly throughout the year. But when you're just starting out and you want to get a lay of the land, it is advantageous for you to get all 3 at once and compare and contrast and look for errors. Once you've gotten all your debts down in a simple list in a spreadsheet like this, it's time to gather all of your assets. This will most likely come from checking or savings accounts, a 401k, retirement fund, mutual funds, or individual stocks that you may own. If you subtract the total liabilities from the total asset, you'll see your current net worth. Your net worth is a very common indicator of your wealth, but don't fret if it's not where you want it to be. You can't navigate to where you want to go until you know exactly where you are. If you've made it this far, that's a really big step, and you should feel really powerful just for taking the time out to understand your current financial situation. Now let's move on to the qualitative personal finance data. So a lot of this is going to be based off the quantitative data, which is why I recommend you focus on the qualitative data second. When I talk about qualitative financial data, I mean things such as your goals with money, your risk tolerance levels, and expected future income, like retirement objectives and your budgeting habits. Based on what you know now, what are your financial goals? It could be to start your emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of expenses, or maybe you have some debt and you want to pay it off quickly, focusing on the high interest loans first. Maybe you noticed your savings wasn't up to par and you want to increase your savings a certain percentage of every check. Maybe you're in good shape financially, but you want to purchase a big ticket item and need to plan for that. Maybe you want to start investing in stocks and other fund types. Whatever it is, now is the time to brainstorm a few ideas based on what you found by taking inventory of your assets and liabilities. As I mentioned before, risk tolerance is something else you definitely want to consider. As the saying goes, the higher the risk, the higher the reward. That's why you get a higher interest rate on stocks than you do on a savings account. But don't worry, we will talk a lot about stocks and savings account in future videos. Believe it or not, when you're thinking about your financial future, it's important to consider your career as a part of the equation as well. You'll want to consider how stable your current job is, and if there's a chance you could be unemployed in the near future, how are you going to manage it? This is something I did a lot of thinking about before I decided to go back to graduate school to get my MBA. The cost of school was one thing, but the opportunity cost of losing my income for 2 years, because I did leave my job for 2 years to do this graduate school program, was a big deal. So when I made the decision to go back to school, it was years before I had already applied some of the knowledge and had already set some goals as far as savings for school. Retirement is one of those few things we plan for decades in advance. If you're over the age of 18 and you haven't started saving for retirement in something like a 401k, you should really start thinking about your plan for the future. Some companies will match a certain % of the money you put away each paycheck. If you're not in school or you're not working at the moment, there are retirement vehicles like a Roth IRA that I would recommend you look into, and again, we'll talk about in our videos. But now is the time to do your research and see what's going to be best for you and when you can start putting money away for yourself for the future. If you followed along in this video, you should have a really good idea of your assets, your liabilities, your goals, and a really good idea of what to do regarding your money. I'm excited to do more future videos to talk about how you can succeed on your personal finance journey.